I'm Cynthia James, and this network is about changing lives one woman at a time. I'm Cynthia James, and this is A Woman Awakening, and I'm your host. I love that every week I get to introduce you to women that are change makers, women that are committed to their own health and well-being and helping others do the same. So I believe this is a time for women awakening on this planet, and so you are in the perfect place at this moment. You can find us on Spotify and iTunes and iHeart and Spreaker and YouTube. Subscribe and come back every week. I guarantee that you will be inspired. So my guest today is Carrington Smith, the author of Blooming, Finding Gifts in the Shit of Life. Despite being born into a legacy of wealth, life was not so kind to her. Carrington has survived sexual assault, 2 divorces, mountains of debt, abuse, religious manipulation, and the loss of close friends. In her best-selling debut memoir, she combines her wit with wisdom to share her journey from trauma to triumph. So today, with a shift in mindset, she lives a life that is filled with joy, opportunity, and purpose. Carrington, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Cynthia.
Well, I'm really grateful to be here. And I just want to start with, how you were brought up, how you grew up.
Yeah. So my family was a little different in 2 ways, really. One, my great-great-grandfather founded International Paper Company.
Mm.
Yeah. And so there was this legacy or sort of hangover of their wealth carried on for a bit, but at one point, there really wasn't much money left. And so the legacy that was left was one of resentment and expectation and entitlement. And so I grew up in a family where, probably the most significant emotion in our household was resentment. And, we're born into this legacy. Some of that was maintained. A lot of they were very concerned with social status and maintaining relationships in various country clubs and social groups and all of that. But they didn't really have the money anymore to live at that level. And so it really caused a bit of stress in the family because the money that was left, people were fighting over it and who got it and all of that. I was the baby. And so my parents were very religious. And that's the other way that our family, I think, is somewhat different in that I was born on the East Coast. We relocated to the West Coast, and my parents discovered religion when they got there and used religion as a form of manipulation to control us. And one of the ways they did that was they decided that since my brother was the firstborn male and my sister was the firstborn female, that they should receive more and be given more. And since I was the baby, I would get the leftovers. And to help people understand that, to give a real sample that people can understand, my mother and my grandmother, my mother, and then my sister all attended Miss Porter's School in Farmington, Connecticut. It's a very prestigious all-girls school. The most elite people attend that school. And I was not given the opportunity to go, but my sister was. So while my sister was at Miss Porter's School hanging out with, I call the private jet crowd and going to these debutante balls, I was attending a public high school and, drinking beer from a keg in vacant lots.
My goodness. Well, okay. So let me just say this, though. That could have created some resentment in you, yeah?
For years it did. I was like, why am I being treated differently? This is so unfair. My brother, they paid for him to go to Stanford. And my sister, after going to boarding school, she went to USC, which, University of Spoiled Children. I mean, they were treated very differently than I was. I was told that I had to go to college in state to pay for their school because they couldn't afford for me to go to a school like theirs. So I attended Washington State University for my first 2 years of college and then transferred. That's a whole other story. But, you know, it could have, and it did for a bit, but I came to realize that actually, because I wasn't given as much, there are two things that happen. As I like to say, I actually was pretty much wholesale rejected by my family, but I like to say rejection brings redirection.
Mhm.
And also with adversity comes opportunity.
Yeah.
And so for me, I became very driven and scrappy, and I'm a survivor. And I got all those skills because of the life experiences that I had. And if I'd lived this cushy life, I wouldn't be that person today. And it's those skills that have made me become who I am today. And thankfully, my focus is not on material possessions or position in society. What I crave and what I love is surrounding myself with quality people who are, just have a very open, beautiful spirit where we share and support each other. And I think I've ended up in a completely different place, and I'm really happy with where I am.
Yeah. Well, I love that. When I was reading your bio, I understand where you came from, not from the wealth perspective, but from overcoming. And I too believe that everything that happens to us makes us who we are. And so I want to just talk a little bit about your personal experiences, the 2 divorces and the assault and all of that. How did you navigate that to get back to center?
Well, it took a lot of time. I mean, I don't want people to come away saying, oh, she just sprung back and everything was, hunky dory. That's not what happened. I mean, I really suffered. And there were times where I suffered from, wanting to kill myself. I mean, I had those moments. But I guess probably one characteristic of my personality is I am definitely a positive thinker. And so even in the worst of times, I was always determined to get to something better, and, decided to do therapy and did a lot of work, all kinds of different things as far as, actual therapy, but also self-help books and healing hypnosis and just trying all kinds of things. But it was really after my second divorce that everything kind of gelled for me. And that is, I was literally laying on the floor of my closet, sobbing. I'm sure we've all been there. And a friend of mine called me and said, Carrie, you may not want to hear this right now, but with adversity comes opportunity. And in that moment, I came to realize that while I was mourning everything that I had lost in the divorce, if I shifted my perspective to everything I was gaining, which is a blank slate, I was no longer beholden to meeting his expectations and desires. I could actually bloom into who I really was and be all about, decorating the house the way I wanted it, and, finding out who I was and what I liked, and just really blooming into my greatness. When I suddenly realized that the divorce was actually a blank slate and a ticket to a new life, when I looked at it from that direction, as opposed to woe's me, look at all I've lost, that was transformative for me. And because of that experience, as things happened to me after that, I began to shift my mindset more quickly, where every time something bad happened, I would look for the opportunity in it and trust and know that there was a gift or an opportunity that was going to come from it. And so I like to say mindset is a muscle. And so the more you flex it and you train your brain when something bad happens to start looking for the good in it, you heal that much more quickly. And again, it's really important to say, I am not minimizing the traumas and tragedies of other people. I'm a true believer that we have to fully experience them and express them. I think one of the reasons it took me so long to get there was because I didn't talk about things for years. I mean, I did, but when I suppressed things and said, I'm good, everything's fine, I was lying to myself and I continued to suffer and I couldn't get better. It wasn't until I owned what had happened to me and claimed it and understood this was really part of who I was. But how was I going to view that? Was I going to say, I've been victimized, woe's me? Or was I going to say, I'm going to use what happened to me to propel me forward? And that's the choice I made.
Yeah, I really honor that because, first of all, I believe secrets are toxic.
Yes.
They keep us spinning. And when you get to the place of taking ownership of what happened to you and the responsibility that you participated in whatever happened, then you get to take a new life. So I want to talk about your book. And so what would you say is the most important message of the book?
I think it really is the mindset thing. I opened the book talking about the sexual assault, and that experience is one of those experiences where people go, how can you find the good in that? I mean, I hear that again and again, like, how can you find the good in being raped? Wow. It took me years, but one of the things I did is I did a lot of reading, and one of the books I read was The Gift of Fear by Gavin de Becker. And in that book, he talks about not just the gift of fear, but he also shares his personal story. And that is, he had this horrifically violent childhood. And instead of pushing it down and saying that didn't happen, he owned that experience and said, my ability to identify violent behavior in others is a gift. And he used it to propel him to greatness, advising CEOs, CFOs, the president of the United States, celebrities. He created this whole business around it. And so looking at that example, I realized, let's look and see what gifts I got from this and how can I claim them and use them to propel me forward. And as opposed to this experience being a drain on me. And what I found was that people would tell me all the time that I have presence. And I like to say it's a quiet confidence. And I kind of thought about it and I realized that comes from that experience and other similar experiences like it, where I know I will get through something. When I enter a room, I'm showing up as, I'm here. I know I'm going to succeed. I know I'm going to get through this. There's sort of that quiet confidence of just being able to own it because I've been through so much. I know I'm going to get through whatever else life brings me.
Right.
And that gift came from that experience.
Right. So you're talking about resilience here.
Yeah, absolutely.
And really learning to stand in your power. And so you and I don't know each other, but the life I live today and everything that I do comes from what you just spoke about, is like using the experiences to create the life that I want and deserve. And so yes. I want to say, this is your first book. Did you know how to write a book?
No. I had written some short stories over the years and really kind of was like, who would care? Like, I'm just an ordinary person. As I like to say, I'm not a celebrity. I'm not a business titan. I'm not any of the things that drive people to buy your book. But when COVID hit, I had this epiphany, and that is that we were all experiencing a universal trauma. Mm-hmm. And suddenly I understood that I was handling this experience much differently than the vast majority of people. And I realized it was my life experiences that made me handle this experience differently. And I realized that it was my very ordinariness that was so compelling. And so when I had that moment, I didn't just feel like I wanted to write a book. I felt compelled that I had to write a book. And so with that spirit, I shut myself away, basically took some trips. So I had some alone time, and I wrote the book in 3 months. I wrote it as a gift to everyone else out there it's just been a rough few years. And I want people to understand that we can get through this stuff. And hopefully by sharing my story, it can kind of act as a roadmap for people to see, I've had those similar experiences and this is how she got through it. Maybe I can draw on that and learn something from it. And the experience, I like to joke the book, there's something in there for everyone between divorces and sexual assault, sexual harassment, debt, all of that. There's something in there for everyone because we've all had those experiences. But it really was written as a gift to everyone else. So,
well, what's wonderful about that is that, first of all, the acknowledgement that humanity got sat down, and
yeah.
and as a part of that, we didn't know what to do because we had been busy doing. And so now it's like we have to be with the things. But one of the things that I'm interested in is that you listened. We have an intuitive knowing that's encoded in us. And you listen to being compelled to the urgency of getting that message, that gift out into the world to support people. So was that something you always had, or was that something you learned as a result of all the things you went through?
That's interesting that you asked that, because there's a whole chapter in the book about intuition. And the reason for that is because growing up, walking on eggshells in my family, having this really religious, strict father who was also a malignant narcissist, I was constantly walking on eggshells, waiting for the next explosion. And so I really sort of grew extra long nerve endings and developed very strong intuitive skills from a very young age. And I like to say that's one of my greatest gifts. So yes, that ability has been there for a number of years. The reason I talk about it in the book, though, is because what happened with me is, with all those bad childhood experiences with my father, I again had a lot of resentment towards him. But when I had the realization that if I was going to be thankful for the gift of intuition, I should also be thankful for the path that birthed it.
Yeah.
That was so powerful. And I suddenly looked at my father in a different light. And I was able to find empathy for him and forgive him. So it, just again, it's that mindset. It's shifting how you look at something and understanding those experiences were actually a gift to me.
Yeah, well, I consider the life challenges and the people involved in those as great teachers. And so to get to the place where you can honor the gift, move into a state of forgiveness so your judgments aren't holding you hostage, you get to just step into a new way of being. And so how wonderful that you could get to that without being surrounded by, highly evolved people that were saying, oh, Carrie, how about you see the gift in this? How about you stand in your power? I mean, there was something in you calling you forward.
Yes.
I want to know, how do people find you? How do they find your book? Because I'm interested in you bringing this gift to the planet.
Oh, thank you. Well, first of all, my personal website is carrington-smith.com. And if you go to that website, your listeners can download the first chapter of the book for free. Mm-hmm. And they can also purchase the book, which is available on Amazon.com. It's also available in Audible. So, and I actually read the book for Audible. So I think it really adds some different dimensions to the story when you can hear my emotions as I'm talking about these things. So, and then of course, my social is all at Carrington ATX, which stands for Austin, Texas, which is where I live. So they can find me in any of those places.
Well, that's incredible. I was just in Austin a few weeks ago. I had such a good time. We were at Memoir, and it was a conference that I was speaking at, and Austin is a fabulous place, and it's got quite a reputation for music and art. That's great.
Yes, I love it.
Yeah. So I ask my guests the same last question. This show is called Women Awakening. What do you think is the most important reason or thing about women awakening on the planet at this moment?
Yeah. Well, I I think it's critical that women awake right now, that they wake up, because I feel like there's a good sector of women who have become complacent. And, recently this last summer, we had, I can't remember how many years since women's suffrage passed, but, I feel like a lot of women, we've sort of rested on our laurels and just taken for granted these new rights that we have as far as voting, owning property, and all of a sudden, with the passage of this or this opinion that came down overruling Roe v. Wade, I think that people really need to wake up and realize that's an erosion of women's rights, and be careful that they're coming for us for other things. And so, if there's one thing we need to wake up about, it's that, in my opinion.
Well, thank you. I couldn't agree with you more. Until the early 1900s, we were considered property, and it feels like that old energy is trying to rear its head again. But we have women like you who are standing up, bringing their voices forward, writing books, teaching, healing, speaking. So I'm so grateful that you're on the planet. I'm so grateful that you're bringing your voice and your experience to empower others. Thank you so much for being here. And I'm grateful to know you.
Oh, thank you, Cynthia. This has been a real pleasure. It's been wonderful connecting with you and having this chat.
Thank you. So, ladies, I'm going to say the same thing I say to you every week. This is your moment. This is your time. You are unique, and that unique ability is your superpower. It is a reminder that you're extraordinary, that you're powerful, that you're dynamic, that you're mighty and necessary. Your energy, your gifts and wisdom are necessary and essential on this planet. I look forward to introducing you to more women, and I will see you soon. Many blessings.